Welcome to another video, everybody. Today we have Zuzana here. She's going to pronounce her last name for me because I have a tendency to slaughter last names, so I don't want to do that. So before we get started, just hit that little like and share and subscribe button and the little notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. And without further ado, we'll get started here. Zuzana, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Tony. So my name is Zuzana, with probably the longest name currently, Janosova-Den Boer. So it's that's why people are confused. And well, if I would like to say something about myself, you can hear my accent. So I was born in Europe, in Czechoslovakia, and I grew up in communist regime. And in 1997, I moved to Canada with my children and my ex-husband. So from 1997, we live all the time in Calgary, Alberta. And I would say that Alberta is definitely my new home. So we are here 23 years and a few weeks, I would say.
Awesome. So I know you've had some very interesting and scary moments in your life, partly to do with communism in Czechoslovakia. Did you want to just explain a little bit about your past there with Czechoslovakia?
Well, yes, thank you very much for this question. Probably the most shaking moment during our communism was for me when I was young engineer, when I graduated from university, and I started my first job in a company which was still communist company, or a company under communism. And after 3 weeks, all of us new employees, we've been called to meeting, which was conducted by a political leader from Communist Party. And I have to mention that every company had to have their branch of Communist Party and full-time employee who just had this political position. And his duty was to talk to new employees, young people. I was at the time 24 or 25, and to explain their activities. And at the end of this meeting, he basically asked who wants to join. I would call that Communist Party for young people, specifically for that branch. So it was probably 20 of us. I was only one girl, actually. The rest was boys, and every single of them, they just said, yes, 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 I'm joining. And then it was my turn, and I absolutely, honestly, without trying to be any hero, I said no. And it was complete silence. And he told me immediately that after meeting, he wants to talk to me in his office. So I went to his office, and he was screaming for a half hour and telling me that I will not receive anything what usually young people they were receiving. So now to explain something, because for example, we didn't have a real estate market, okay? You couldn't go out and buy an apartment, house, duplex, townhouse, whatever, some property. Communist Party was constructing or building apartment buildings mostly, and they were giving apartments to young people, but only to those who agreed and behaved accordingly what Communist Party they wanted. So he immediately told me that I will not receive any apartment. Another thing which Communist Party was also controlling was daycare. Of course, we didn't have any private business, no private daycares, okay? So they built the buildings which they were running daycares. And again, to get spot in daycare, you had to have approval of Communist Party.
Of course.
Well, guess what? If you, again, didn't comply with them, your child will not get spot in daycare. So he told me, forget about daycare. And another thing which he told me, forget about any salary raise or benefits or anything. So I was very young, and that was my first, I would say, real experience face to face, how they can interact with you, like a really negative experience. So I was quite shaken. I was only lucky that was this happened in 80s when Communist Party did not have such a power just like in 70s, so 1970, especially after 1968, you know, the power of Communist Party was quite brutal. But in 80s was weakening. And on the top of that, my boss, my direct boss, secretly was anti-communist. So when he heard my story, he actually was supporting me, okay, instead of going after me. So I was lucky in this situation. But nevertheless, I did not receive apartment. I did not receive a daycare spot for my children. It had to go through my husband. So it was scary because I realized first time how they can squeeze you. Either you will obey, either you will do what they will tell you, or they will show you who is boss here.
Definitely
So
sounds like
yeah.
China, definitely, and some of the stuff we see coming up here for sure. So, in your article, I Survived Communism. Are you ready for your turn? You described all the different stages of the KGB method for subversion of society. Can you explain a little bit about those methods that was there?
Yes, so this article was published first time by Spetsen Fernando in January 2019, just 8 months before our last federal election. And that was my message and warning for Canadians. And I concentrate in this article on explanation of KGB method for subversion of society. So there are three basic stages. The first one is polarization, the second one destabilization, and the last one is revolution. Polarization is that, in nutshell, communist or communist party, doesn't matter how they call themselves, okay? They can call themselves completely differently, and I will come to this point. They don't need to call themselves communist. They are trying to divide society as much as possible, meaning to turn employees against employer, to turn women against men, to turn black community against white community. So they introduce different variety of, I would say, chaos and almost like an anarchy, just to divide society as much as possible. Now, our communists, they've been primarily concentrated on turning people against private business, meaning employees against employers. So they always represent private business owners as monsters who are using and exploiting their employees for profit. Okay, and this word is very important because this word is used quite a lot here, and I will also come to that. So, I would say I would like to use one quote which I read from George Orwell, which said that communists don't care about poor people; they just hate rich ones. I asked myself why they hate them so much, and then I realized that they cannot control successful private businesses. If you have a successful economy where you have strong middle class represented from lots of private business companies, then I would say it's a healthy competition in the way that employers, they have to take care of employees because they can lose, especially those good ones, okay? And employees also, they have then motivation, to be good employees for the employer who is taking care of them. For example, paying benefits, or there are many different things. What I saw, what employers they can do for employees. So people, they can freely move from one company to another company. There is demand and offer, market. But that means that you cannot control people, and you definitely cannot control employers. But if you destroy private business, then all people, they have to become employees of government. Doesn't matter that they are not in public service anymore. Okay, they can work in industry. We had industry which was producing some means of construction of production, which was also controlled by government. So, for example, I was in the engineering company, and we were doing design for buildings, and this was not private engineering company. This was state-run company. So so state basically control my salary. State control how much vacation I will have, where I will stay, how much I will make. State control everything. And if I would complain, I would not get even this. I couldn't go to another employer. So this is about control. So that's why they are going after private business. Now, more a polarized society, more chaotic situation they will create, better for them. Then they can seize control more easily. They are working about breaking down families, turning children against parents. Very, very much so. Because they know that emotional connection and relationship between children and parents it's the strongest one, right? So usually parents, they pass their values on their children, or this is what they want. But that means, again, state, it's not controlling children. So this polarization is going also in family. Now, the thing which they use also for polarization is media. They have to control media. So they have to send out the same message. People, they have to be surrounded by absolutely the same speaking, the same message. So then if you have even doubts, if you feel like if you turn on TV and you hear the same, you turn on radio, you hear the same, you are starting to doubt your own thoughts, and ideas. And society, it's slowly pushing you to agree and to obey, and basically to follow everybody else. So I would say that this first stage, polarization, is just to divide society as much as possible and turn people against private business as much as possible. They started with all industry. Now they are going after farmers, ranchers, and so on. So people, they think that this was at the beginning only about all industry. No, it was just a question of time. They will go further. So second stage, destabilization. This always was including education, and both stages, they are running almost at the same time. So again, I would like to use quote from very well-known person with name Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, who said, "Give me child for 8 years, and he or she will be communist forever." They know that children in very young age, they are more vulnerable, and you can pass your beliefs on them more easily. They are also more altruistic. So you have to use buzzwords around justice, and especially social justice. It's basically wish coming from I would say ages, and young people, they are more perceptive toward justice. So Communist Party has to start to control education. They infiltrate schools, they completely control them, and they control teachers. And we, all of us, we had to become pioneers since age. Well, I was like in grade 4, so I was 9 years old. Okay, and pioneers, that was something like a young organization or organization for children, future communist. Okay, and they were systematically indoctrinating us, and in different documentary movies, different speeches, different acts, they were always stipulated how communist society is the best society with the best social system, how they are protecting us against imperialists who will come and they will exploit us. They always use fear mongering. Fear is very, very powerful, and especially survival instinct. So when I can see somebody how they play, with those emotions, I know that behind that is desire to control, starting with manipulation. So I would say regarding teachers that some of them, I'm sure they knew what is happening, but they absolutely couldn't do anything. Okay, and they had to comply with system. Otherwise, not only they would lose job, but their children, their family would be in trouble. Meaning that maybe their children wouldn't get in school, their parents would lose job as well. So Communist Party always punished people. If you don't obey, they punish you. And then I remember also teachers who've been quite proactive, who were reporting even children who had some kind of not compliance with the communist regime, or maybe those children, they just overheard something at home, they brought to school, that was immediately reported. And I can say that, for example, my parents, they avoid discussion about politics at home. And I think that was out of fear that me as an innocent child, I will say something in school, and all of them, they are in trouble. So the last stage, when society is polarized, children are indoctrinated. So that means they turn children against parents. So parents are all of a sudden powerless because their own child is against them. Okay, and that child is basically becoming property of the state. That's how the parents, they're losing their children, literally. Then they can call for election, the last democratic election. If they will win, that's it. They will confiscate all properties, properties over a certain period of time, nationalize. The people who've been opponents, they are either in jail or they are executed, killed. And actually, the biggest supporters of Communist Party, they've been also jailed and executed. And the reason was because they knew that lots of people, they supported them because they truly believe that this is a real system with justice. They did not see that this is just manipulation for power, and they knew, Communist Party knew that once those people, they found out how they've been used and betrayed, they will try to create dissident movement. So they just kill them or jail them. In 50s, we had those famous trials with old people who've been proactive in establishment of Communist Party. They've been jailed, they've been executed. So, and this not happened not only in Czechoslovakia, in majority of communist parties, communist countries. So those are those basic, methods. It's I call that that they are slowly conditioning people. All this process, it's taken between 20 to 30 years. So it's not visible from one day to another day. Okay, and in some countries, 20 to 30 years. In Czechoslovakia, it happened faster because we had Second War, and that contribute toward this motion that Communist Party can actually bring justice.
Yeah, I'd
So
read a book in Romania, I think, was another one that had happened fairly quickly, and that's kind of in and around that
yes,
area. Yeah, yeah. There was.
lots of communism in Europe happened just few years after Second War, and I think because what happened during Second War, this brought this new wave of desire of better system with justice. That's all. That was at the beginning. That was a beautiful idea. It turned to disaster.
Yeah, that's the way they mask it, is presenting it
Exactly.
as a beautiful idea.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So one cross thing I definitely saw from what you're saying is definitely the media, definitely like because we see CNN, MSNBC, Global, CBC, CTV. There's more that could be included in there, but definitely like across the board, mainstream media, you see the lies that they spread, and they all basically
Yeah.
have the exact same talking points, every single one of them. So it's obvious when you're looking at it from my perspective, but other people, I guess, they just kind of buy into it, and like you say, fear is probably playing in there. So do you see a lot of those similarities crossing between Canada and what you saw in Czechoslovakia there?
Well, absolutely, and not only in Canada, but I would say generally Western societies. I think all Western societies they are under attack, uh, and I would say socialist coup. And in different country, it's maybe different level. Now, when we come to Canada, I would say that in some part of Canada, they achieve critical mass, meaning that, and this is especially what I realized after last federal election. Uh, um, indoctrination, as I said, it's a long, long process, and you have to slowly condition people that at the end they will feel that if they demand their freedom, they are selfish. Okay, so it's almost just like when I like this. What would they use? That when you put a frog in hot water, the frog will just jump. But when you will put frog in cold water, actually slowly you can cook this frog. So you have to just add more and more temperature slowly. So frog is not even realizing what is happening, and then it's late. It's too weak. So that is how they're subverting society now. What I see in Canada, which is absolutely alarming, how much they infiltrated all academia, starting from elementary school, high schools, and universities. All those children, and unfortunately, probably also lots of teachers, they really think that they are building something new, exciting, and this buzzword is justice for all. Yes, that's
Mm-hmm.
what exactly our communists they use, because who can actually object that, right? And this is just preparation for the next stage when there will be no protest, there will be no space to say whatever they wanted to say. Sometimes when I see those young university students protesting something in the camp and promoting socialism, which is just new Trojan horse for communism,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they just don't know what they are talking about. Um, I wonder if they know that if they would succeed, there will be no protest anymore. That's it. They will be just kicked out, for example, from school. They would have a problem even to find a job.
Yeah.
So because I think we didn't pay attention to this process for quite a long time. Now, as I said, it achieved in some parts of Canada critical mass, meaning that people, they lost perception of reality. And I really like actually to read something what was said by Nikita Khrushchev in 1960, and this was message to Americans, but I would say that this is message to Western society, okay, as a whole. So he said, you North Americans are so gullible. No, you won't accept communism outright, but we will keep feeding you small doses of socialism until you will finally wake up and find that you are already having communism. We won't have to fight you. We will weaken your economy until you will fall like overripe fruit into our hands. He said that, and you know who was Nikita Khrushchev, right? Communist leader in Russia, in Soviet Union, sorry. And he said that in 1960. Well, we have 2020, and look how close he is.
Yep.
So I'm very concerned how Canadians, specifically, are oblivious and complacent. They just don't believe that this can happen here. Well, it's happening already, and some parts of Canada, I would call that they are taken. They don't know what is happening to them. And people who maintain common sense, they are outnumbered.
Well, and you see that happening in the UK and Australia. Like, they can't protest.
Exactly.
They're being arrested for protesting. There's a reporter there, and a few other reporters who've had their doors knocked on in the middle of the night because they're reporting what the government doesn't like. And it's like, yeah, it's definitely, we're not far behind. Those are other Commonwealth nations, so we're not that far behind them.
It's very concerning, very, very concerning. This is what exactly our secret police was doing.
Yeah. So I'm guessing I already know the answer to this, but does what you're seeing develop here in Canada and the US, and I would include the UK and Australia, those kind of places, does that scare you?
Well, absolutely. I would never have expected that such a thing can happen here, you know. And yeah, I even moved here with family to be absolutely sure that any socialist idea here would be rejected. And I would say that I also underestimate the extreme left, that they are such a masters in psychological war. They understand how people, they think, and they are absolutely great in manipulation. So, and because I think Canadians, they are also conditioned to be nice, you know, more nice than to stand for themselves and to fight. I think they can have tendency to fulfill or fall for that idea. And again, depends where we are, in which part of country. So it's not the same. I wouldn't say it's the same for each province or each part of Canada. So it's definitely scary. I still see some hope, but I would say for a certain part of Canada is hope. Certain part of Canada has to go probably through entire lesson. What that means is that they have to hit with their poverty bottom line, just like we had to. And then, you know, once there's nothing on the table, all ideas are gone and gloves are off.
Yeah, I would say BC, Ontario, and Quebec would definitely be far ahead of the rest of the country in terms of that, with the Maritimes close behind.
In BC, I see quite that it's difference between southern BC and northern BC.
Yeah, and
there are more industries in northern BC, and I think they can more relate to more traditional Western values. Okay, and that means self-reliance, and and individualism, not some kind of collectivism, which I see more in those parts which you just described. And unfortunately, I know, okay, people, they need money, so now government is spending lots of money, but at the same time, again, they are conditioning people that they don't need to work, they can depend on government. This is very, very dangerous. This is completely opposite what truly, I would say, capitalist um, society and connected with Western values was promoting, self-reliance, not depending on government.
Yeah, and yeah, we definitely the Vancouver area, BC, is the area where I definitely see it the most. And I would say, there used to be the NDP, and then there was the Liberal, and then there was Conservative, but now there really isn't room for the NDP because the Liberals have moved so far left that it's kind of pushed into one party with the NDP, basically, which leads towards the communist values there.
Well, unfortunately, you see, if I read that also, or I wrote that also in my article, that if you wanted to describe communism just by one word, it's deception. What that means, they will use different names, but they will use the same methods for the subversion. So, for example, I heard that, oh wow, the current Liberal Party with RPM, Justin Trudeau, they have only minority. Well, but their values and their ideology has majority. We have socialists in federal government, or yes, in federal government or federal parliament, which they call themselves liberals, NDP, Greens, and I'm not sure if I can also add Bloc Québécois. Okay, so for me, this is just different shade of red.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, when I'm listening also now to some members of different conservative parties, I would call them more like liberals, which they call themselves conservatives. So true conservative values are disappearing. And this is really bad, but absolutely really bad for our children, because for them to be fully developed individual who can be proud of himself, herself, and their achievement, they need this individual freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. So why do you think we're starting to see the rise of communism under this guise of socialism or Marxist that they call it pop up here in Canada and the US a lot more when it's been such a disaster everywhere where it's been attempted? It's just resulted in awful revolutions and that kind of thing, and death. Why do you think that we're seeing that pop up here now?
Well, number one, I think everything started 20, 30 years ago, and only now we can see result. Okay, they infiltrated schools and media much, much sooner. Okay, and now they know that because they are controlling media, majority of media, they are controlling, I would say, quite big portion of schools, and unions, they play a really big negative role in that. They know that they are forming people's opinion, and this was slow process now. And what they started to do, what I realized, they knew that the word communism was basically now representing like negative connotation. So people, they rejected communism, just this word. But the word socialism was not rejected. And they started to use at the beginning the word socialism with another word, democratic socialism. Well, I can tell you this is oxymoron. There is no democracy in socialism. And socialism is first step to communism. So, as I said, their main characteristic is deception. So they are lying from the beginning. They will say, okay, socialism is about free healthcare and free education, all this justice. They don't explain that then is something after that. And if anybody would say, oh, wait a minute, I'm not for socialism, then they will ask, okay, well, you don't want to give chance to everybody to have education and everybody to have access to healthcare. Well, it's very hard to argue that, right? But as I said, then it's second stage. Then and what I'm expecting is that the word democratic eventually will be dropped and will be socialism there. And more things, they will need to be accepted in the order to protect from others. I saw recently also encouragement to report people if they don't comply with certain law. Well, I didn't see that 20 years ago. So again, they are training people, to spy on each other, to be snitches. We had those informers everywhere, and we literally hate them. And this is also connected with socialism. At the same time, they started to represent countries like Norway, Denmark, Finland. They are successful socialist countries. Even those countries, they said that they are not socialist. All of them, they have full speed capitalism. They have taxes which they are supporting capitalism. Yes, they have higher personal taxes. That means the society is financing education, is financing healthcare, but they have also private education. They have also private healthcare. And some of those, they don't have minimum wage. So this part, you won't hear. You will only hear that society is financing, some service, some public service, but you won't hear everything. So there is lots of lies. And these lies, they were going through years and years and years. And now I can see how people are repeating the same and the same and the same. So how this happened over time, just like all this subversion is happening. And I would say that we are literally in the second stage of subversion of society. The next one is revolution.
Yeah, I think when you mention the snitches, it reminds me of a meme I've seen going around Facebook that was talking about how, the government wants you to snitch for them, but is the government going to come and change your tire when you have a flat on the side of the road? Are they going to help you out when you're having an issue in your house? No, your neighbors are who's going to come and help you, and your friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you see, it's again, and we can call even that this is part of polarization, again, to turn neighbors against each other, So just how to disrupt people as much as possible so they are not together, they cannot create something against us, meaning state.
Yeah. So control seems to be a big main theme going through all of this. Control the people, control the media. By that, you're controlling the narrative, especially by controlling the media. So how have they gone about accomplishing this control that they've now got?
Well, it's true that when communism came to power in 1948, for example, in Czechoslovakia, we didn't have internet, right? But they seized everything what was available for communication, meaning radio, newspaper, anything. They established a specific department, which had to approve every single book which was published, every single newspaper which was published, every single song which was published, everything what could have any influence on people, on their thinking. had to be first approved by a special department, which was established by Communist Party.
Yeah. They have their fingers in
Now
everything.
we have internet, and I can, to my amusement, I see lots of similarities. Already censorship, and they introduced something like a hate speech term. What's that? If I have different opinion, that can be labeled hate speech. And again, there is some kind of emotional connection. Instead, I forgot to say it, like they always use some buzzwords, and I can hear these buzzwords here. Like, for example, the word denier. We know very well that science is never settled, okay? So any credible scientist would not call not a scientist who has different opinion on any subject denier, but opponent. But if you start to label scientists who is, let's say, questioning man-made climate change, don't call them opponents. That doesn't have some emotional impact. But when you will call them denier, that means that person is maybe denying some kind of your human rights to live in a clean environment. I know what else. So there is again emotional impact inside that. Another buzzword is profit. They won't explain that, okay, if somebody wants to be private owner, he or she, maybe they have to take a loan. Maybe they have to invest in something. They have to take a risk. Maybe they have to work much longer than 40 hours per week. Maybe they have responsibility. Maybe they have to comply with law. And so on and so on. Maybe sometimes even they are not taking salary for themselves, so they can pay their employees. All of that I saw. No, they will use the word profit as something that, okay, if he or she paid all those salaries and there is something extra, okay, so it's not for this person who took all this risk and responsibility, but it's again, they connect to some negative connotation toward profit, meaning that that person was exploiting their employees. That's it. It's using them. So they are using the same buzzwords, I would say. And to me, it's literally amazing how this is working, because I heard all those words. The last one, I heard something like new normal. What's that? After 1968, when you probably heard, we started to have small democratic revolution in Czechoslovakia, and then Communist Party of Czechoslovakia, they invited, basically they called Moscow and Russian army together with armies from different communist countries, such as Germany, Poland, I think Hungary. Only Romania was not there. They invaded Czechoslovakia with army tanks, and all this democratic revolution was stopped. Okay, and after that, Communist Party basically regained their power again, and they said, okay, and now this is what we call new normalization. Why they use even the same term? What is this new normal? New normalization? So that means that people, they have to start to get used to that they have much, much less freedom. Are we willing to accept that? So my message to people is, if you will not stand for what is right, one day can be late. And I would like to really use one quote, which was said by Albert Einstein. He said, the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. And he had first-hand experience when he had to run from Germany because he was Jewish and Hitler was coming to power and was basically rescued in the United States. Lots of people, they knew that something is wrong in Germany, but they were keeping quiet. That's it. So I don't think we can afford to be oblivious. and complacent. And freedom is definitely not for free.
No, no, we need awareness has to be out there. That is 100%. We have to be opening people's eyes and letting them know what's going on and that what we see going on, for sure. Is there any words of warning or advice that you'd like to send to Canadians or any of our viewers from abroad, even?
Well, what I could say at the end, if we would not stand up for our freedom, which I definitely treasure the most because I grew up in society without freedom. So I know what kind of life is without freedom and to be controlled full time. Okay. And I would like to tell a few things what basically it's coming. The people, they have to realize that what is coming is they have to basically then accept that they have to train something like the servitude and obedience. My message for media is that if you will not stop, eventually you will be required to have license. And this license can be taken from you if you will not comply 100% with ideology of party which is in power. Okay, that will be your legacy, that you are used for indoctrinating people. Teachers, if you will also not stop, you will be used for propaganda. You will have mandatory political seminars. You will be required to report children who are speaking something what is against, again, main ideology. That will be also your legacy. And for parents, if you will not stand again for your parental rights, your child will become property of the state.
Yeah, we see some of
So
that control in Quebec. I was just listening to a lady from Quebec, and she was talking about police coming into the schools to make sure children are wearing masks and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, right there, right there. That's exactly what you're talking about.
well, I hope those parents they realize that this is not okay.
Yeah,
This is absolutely not okay.
tell them to shove it and get out. Yeah, for sure. So thank you for coming on. This has been very enlightening. I think these are very, very important messages that need to go out to people. So definitely thank you for being willing to share that. I know it can't be easy for you to talk about all this stuff. So
Well,
thank you for
yeah,
that.
it's quite process, that's for sure. Yes.
Yes. So
Well, thank you for inviting me, Tony, and I'm very happy to see that. I really hope that more young people they will do what you are doing because this is what we need. If we will lose young people and our children, we are losing our future.
I think you're very, very right. Very right. So thank you again, and thank you everybody for watching. Catch you on the next video.